Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Hey, yo, fellas, let's put a bow on week 12 with Monday Night Football tonight. A game where if the Seattle Seahawks win tonight, I'm pretty sure every single team in the NFC except the Detroit Lions is only a game out of a playoff spot. Both the playoff spots right now, two of the wild cards are taken up by 5-win teams, and if Seattle wins, it'll be a 4-win team, and that is what you call parity in the NFC, at least in the middle part of it, right? A couple teams up excelling up top, one bottom feeder not getting there too much in Detroit, but maybe they can get a win to save this season. But it's just interesting. I rarely ever look at the standings because I'm so focused on individual game performances, individual player performances, slates, and all that week-to-week stuff, and I was like, holy shit, this is a lot closer. So I'm never one to root for Seattle, but I could be rooting for them and definitely some of their players tonight. So here we go. Let's close it up on the Week 12 slate. I appreciate all of you being here. Let's get right into it by player performance, starting with the highest salary. If you have 2 seconds of your time, ratethispodcast.com/Sal. Simple as that. You leave a 5-star review. It takes you there. You just tap a button. You write something nice quickly. It's 30 seconds. Get you into a raffle to win $100 weekly that we will be pulling next week. So ratethispodcast.com/Sal, and we will start it up top right now with Mr. Russell Wilson. And Russell Wilson has been playing like, absolute dong, and he's going to have a massive negative offensive line advantage in this one because Washington's pass rush, although their secondary, which is actually coming along somewhat these last couple of weeks, although their secondary has not been the best the whole year, their defensive line has still been solid even without Chase Young, ranking top 10 in tackling, top 10 in run D, and yes, top 10 in pass rush will have an advantage today. Since returning from this injury, Russell Wilson is not the same player. He has been seeing 52% completion, absolute dog shit, 184 yards per game, 0 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. It could be a get-right spot versus Washington's number 28 ranked secondary, according to Pro Football Focus. And on a slate where not a ton of guys are projecting out for insane usage or insane fantasy points, Russ does project out as my highest projected player, just barely ahead of the quarterback on the opposite one in this one, and Taylor Heineke. So it keeps Russ in play, but I'm not going to be putting him on here just yet as a yes. Now, if you're playing 150 lineups, there's a really good chance that I'm going to be getting somewhere around 40 to 50+% of Russ. Now, I do think Russ, according to my ownership projections, you can get them down below if you want to, join the lovely community on Patreon. I have Russ coming in at 65% projected ownership. So if I got 50%, I'd be below the field. I expect as of now to be below the field on him. We will see on the live stream later tonight at 6 p.m. East Coast time exactly where I end up. The next player on this list is somebody who continues to get there, and it's not just on efficiency. Like, he's getting there on efficiency to an extent, but he has 7 or more targets in every single game since week 1. So it's also volume, right? The man's 29% target share, ranks top 10 in the NFL right now. He's number 1 in the entire NFL in terms of his percentage of his team's air yards. He's number 1 in deep targets with over 20 deep targets at 20+ yards this year. So there's upside there, right? He has the efficiency, right? He's getting a lot of these efficiency metrics, but he has the upside on the volume, and he's number 2 in the entire NFL in wide receiver snaps. The man is barely coming off the field 95% of the time right now. He's basically a walking 10 points. That's not going to get you there at 10,600, but in a close to half of his games, he's gone over 20. And in this matchup against Seattle, I do think it's a favorable spot for Terry McLaurin. At 10,600 right now, like if you're playing in a GPP, early on, I probably would lean to Terry McLaurin over Russell Wilson. Maybe not in small field stuff. Like if you're playing in a small field single entry and 3 max, I probably lean to the quarterback who's a little bit safer, who has some mobility, who gets probably 18 to 20 points more than this wide receiver will, just based on how quarterback scoring goes. But when the wide receiver pops off, he's hitting that 25 to 35 number a lot more probably than Russell Wilson will be. So that's where in the larger field tournaments, I lean, if you're playing one lineup, which I think most people here are, I lean to Terry McLaurin over Russell Wilson. In my projections, I have Russell Wilson for 3 more points, which is why if you're just going pure projection-wise, smaller field stuff, if you play cash games, go Russ. Larger field shooting for the ceiling, I have Terry McLaurin for a higher ceiling right now. The next man up is a wide receiver on the opposite team, which the wide receiver pricing on Seattle is a little bit confusing to me, I guess. Tyler Lockett so far this year in 5 games with Russell Wilson is averaging 6.6 targets per game, right? He's mainly getting there off of big play success. You saw a massive play last week, didn't result in a touchdown, but he had the massive play last week. He had 3 touchdowns in his first 2 games of the year with Russ, and now he has 100 or more air yards in 3 straight games, and he has 100 or more air yards in 4 to 5 games so far with Russell Wilson. So there's a lot of upside there for him on a 25% target share. Well, if you're getting a 25% target share pretty consistently right now from Tyler Lockett, we would expect Russ to throw somewhere around 30 to 35 45 times, you factor in 1 or 2 throwaways or just bat down to the line of scrimmage, and that's where you're starting to see these 7 target games for Tyler Lockett fall into, and it does look good. But at 10,200, I would prefer McLaurin, who's a little bit more. I think McLaurin obviously has a higher target share, competing with guys like Dax Millen and DeAndre Carter, and maybe he gets back Curtis Samuel this week, who's been only limited in 1 full game this year. So I'll take on Terry McLaurin's usage and upside over Tyler Lockett's for a similar price right now, which is going to make Tyler Lockett a maybe, because if I like Terry McLaurin more and I like the guy below Tyler Lockett more in Taylor Heineke here, it's tough to get to Lockett, and I like the guy below that a little bit more, right? So Taylor Heineke looks like potentially the best play on the slate right now. He's going to have the #1 pass protection grade this week, according to Pro Football Focus, against Seattle's bottom 5 pass rush in the NFL. You've had Mr. Taylor Heineke here finishing as a quarterback 1 in 3 out of his last 4 games. I mean, Terry McLaurin has been benefiting actually from Taylor Heineke lately. Heineke has been playing a lot better. These last 2 games, Heineke's had a lot of success here as I look over on my sheet. He's had strong finishes in terms of an 81% and a 73% completion percentage, 8.7 yards per attempt over his last 2 games, and 4 total touchdown passes, with a little bit of rushing upside as well in there. A 29-yard rushing game. He had a 90-plus yard rushing game like a month ago. So Taylor Heineke right now on a showdown slate in a good matchup looks really good, and most of the time quarterbacks are at least $10,000, right? You're getting like an $11,000 quarterback like Russ, a $10,400 one. He's $9,800. He's very easy to get to on this slate. So Heineke for me is looking very strong. Heineke for me is a yes. And people will ask me, so if I play McLaurin, I have to play Heineke. I mean, it will work out. You can afford it on this slate. You don't have to though, right? You don't have to. The night that I won earlier, a month and a half, 2 months ago, the $30,000, I had Devontae Adams in the captain spot without Aaron Rodgers. Part of that had to do with the pricing of Aaron Rodgers on this slate, and it is definitely easier to get to McLaurin on this slate. So yeah, I do think you definitely can play it, but you don't have to. You don't have to pigeonhole yourself into lineups as long as the lineups still make sense to you. So now we'll talk about this final guy who I would consider the closeout of like the 5 studs on this slate, and it's DK Metcalf. And this is another reason why it's a little bit difficult for your boy over here, your boy with the Miami Vice shirt on. We're feeling good. We're feeling like ourselves right now. Might be trying to book a trip to Florida later today. Who knows? We'll see. Have a good time, right? And live your life. Just live your life, like Rihanna and T.I. said. Shout out the GOATs. But it's tough to get to Tyler Lockett, or at least a little bit more difficult to get to Tyler Lockett, and this is the dilemma between it, because he's so much more expensive than DK Metcalf, when Metcalf is the wide receiver 1 of the team. When Metcalf is averaging more volume with Russ in 5 games, 8.2 targets per game compared to the 6.6 targets per game that you're getting for Tyler Lockett. When Metcalf himself has a massive and likely a very, very just massive unit on the dude, right? I mean, look at this guy. He's the #1 right there with A.J. Brown. Size, speed, specimen player in the NFL. I get it. Lockett's got these deep bombs on him, and it's kind of hit or miss. Metcalf is going to be a lot more consistent. Now, in his last 2 games, yeah, it's been bad because Russ has been dog shit. He's been averaging a 52% completion percentage. He's been dog shit. But you've seen 18 targets over the last 2 games for him, 7 catches, 57 yards. And this is a very strong matchup in the Washington secondary where nobody is going to have an advantage against him with a solid team total. DK Metcalf for me, I lean DK Metcalf over Mr. Tyler Lockett. Now, you might be wondering, where are the ownership numbers coming in right now on Lockett versus Metcalf, and also maybe on McLaurin? Well, sign up for Patreon, you can see, but I'm happy to share where the current ones are at right now. Lockett I have coming in at 48% ownership, and Metcalf 52%. So if you told me Metcalf was going to be like 58% owned, and Lockett was going to be like 40% or 38% owned, and there's actually a 20% ownership difference, yeah, I can get there a little bit more. But right now, it's not looking like that. It's not looking like that at all. And I don't think I'm shocking anybody here when I go back into this and I say that those guys up top, those 5 guys up top, are likely your best captain options on the slate. Like, we'll get down through the slate more, and you have guys who are limited, guys who are splitting their roles like 3 different ways, guys coming back from an injury and in murky status on what they will do, but also how that's going to affect the other players on their respective teams. So these 5 guys that we're talking about right here are probably your 5 best captain options in my opinion. And I really, really like the price discount you're getting on Terry McLaurin or on Taylor Heineke. McLaurin to an extent, but Taylor Heineke and DK Metcalf. So if you're looking at where to start captain lineups today, I'm probably starting along the lines of a DK Metcalf, Taylor Heineke, and seeing where I can build my lineup out there. They're both below $10,000. They are 2 of my 3 highest projected players on the slate. It makes a lot of sense. After that, I probably start to go all the way up top and hope that you get a Russell Wilson start to be himself again, and those other 2 wide receivers would fall in line after that. So in terms of captains that stand out today, and the full breakdown we just discussed and talked about, the full breakdown, I'm probably leaning a McLaurin and a Metcalf, trying to play around with your lineups there, build out different styles of lineups with those 2 fellas. That's where I'm leaning on the captains, followed by Russ, Lockett, McLaurin in probably that order. We'll know on the live stream, though, later tonight, 6 p.m. on the main channel, the Sal Vetri channel right here. If you're watching this on the Clips channel, Sal Vetri main channel, if you want to tune in for that one. Before we continue to go, let's talk about some of the props that I've taken. We just talked about Lockett. I do like Lockett. I know I didn't like him as much of another player, but that was mainly due to price tag. Lockett over 57.5 receiving yards. I have that number on Lockett. I have that number in the low 70s right now on Lockett. I have him for 71 receiving yards tonight in this really good matchup. We take Lockett there, who just went over 100 yards last week. In a game where Russell Wilson continues to stink, he still got Lockett over 100 yards. So take the over there. Logan Thomas returning today. There is no Ricky Seals-Jones, who is doubtful. I think Logan Thomas might not play his full role, but even if he doesn't play his full role, I feel pretty decent about an over 28.5. The tight end is heavily involved in this Washington football team offense. It has been now for a couple of years in this offense, so I do like Logan Thomas returning. He's expected to play tonight over 28.5. I combine those two together, and you use the code SAL, and you get a free bet up to $100 on prizepicks.com. You go to prizepicks.com, 2 seconds, type it into your keyboard, prizepicks.com. Code SAL, bada bing, bada bang, a free bet up to $100. You can take that one if you want to tail that one. The only other one I took was on Underdog. I took Antonio Gibson under 68.5 rushing yards, so I like the under there. We'll talk about Antonio Gibson next. And then I took the over on Alex Collins, 43.5. That's more so playing the numbers. Right now I have Antonio Gibson for the low 60s. I have Alex Collins for the low 50s, so I'll take those numbers there. I'll play those numbers. Same exact thing here. If you use the code SAL, you get a free bet up to $100 on Underdog.com. So you can try those out. Those are two prop sets. I usually like to compare the lines, because the line to take the under, and you have to always shop, because the line to take Antonio Gibson on a prize picks is like 61.5. Well, I got a much better number here for 7 more yards. That 7 yards matters. The line for Alex Collins was 47.5, but I wanted the over, so I would go over to Underdog, and I got 43.5. Those 4 yards, they might not seem like they matter. They matter a whole lot, especially for guys who are going to carry the ball 14, 15 times today, and that's basically like an extra carry you don't have to worry about. So that is the props that I have tonight. Code SAL on either site, prizepicks.com and Underdog.com, get you that free bet up to $100 Rooskies, and we get into it now. So now this is the range where it's like overpriced city. Like, it's really overpriced, but you just kind of have to deal with it. Antonio Gibson comes on here, and this is a man facing the number 3 run defense according to Pro Football Focus in the Seattle run defense. He's only played over 50% of the snaps once since week 5, which has to do a little bit with these hairline fractures that he's got going on, the stress fractures, and then also Mr. Jaret Patterson getting a little bit involved in himself, the rookie. You have not seen Antonio Gibson have over 10 routes run in a game since week 5. That's all J.D. McKissic's role. Like, he's still getting some targets. He's only out there running like 8 routes, but he's still seeing a target or two, but it's not that consistent, or it doesn't have much upside to it. And he's had below 10 fantasy points in every game he has not scored a touchdown. So if Antonio Gibson is not having 2 touchdown games, he basically has no ceiling this year. Like, if you're trying to get Antonio Gibson into the 20-point range to try and be a captain tonight, it probably has to come from the 2 touchdown games, because J.D. McKissic is there, and it's not really getting there through the passing game. He has no upside through the passing game. He's not having these 25 carry games because Jaret Patterson's running the ball 5 to 10 times a game. Again, probably somewhat to do with these stress fractures that Antonio Gibson has going on. So Gibson at $8,600, he's a tough sell for me. I'll keep him in play because there's 2 touchdown upside. But really, I think if he has to score a touchdown to even be in consideration at this price tag, but you're not convincing me to play Antonio Gibson over like Metcalf right here between their price tags. So Gibson at $8,600, really tough to want to get to. I would probably say if I had to choose one guy at $8,000 or above who's a no, it's definitely Gibson. He needs those 2 touchdown upsides. It's going to reflect in his ownership, but not enough. I think he still comes in similarly owned to some of these guys, definitely above 40% ownership in a lot of contests tonight. You scroll down to his backfield running mate, and it's another guy who probably is just ridiculously overpriced at $7,200. Like 6+ opportunities in 7 straight games. That's great. But if I'm saying that you're going to be getting 6 opportunities, I mean, your price tag should probably be closer to somewhere around, I don't know, $3,000, $4,000. Like, if I'm happy you're getting 6 opportunities for us, right? Like a backup running back's usage, it should be lower. The reason why it's not lower is obviously because he has the receiving game upside. He had 100 yards total a couple of weeks back, right? These 10 target games. He's had 4 or more targets in 6 out of 7 games. But we're going to either need to see a touchdown here or a 4 to 5 reception, not target, 4 to 5 reception game for him to pay off this price tag of $7,200. To pay off a price tag of $7,200, you likely, well, one, either everybody else on the slate has to just stink, right? Or you likely have to go for somewhere around a 13 to 15 fantasy point day, which is definitely possible for McKissic, especially if he's catching 4 or 5 balls or finding the end zone. But neither of those things are easy tasks, especially when your team only has a 23 implied team total. So I'll say that McKissic and Gibson are both in play right now. I would rather have Gibson to McKissic, even though there's a price difference, if I had to choose one based on their value. We keep going down to the running backs who are overpriced, and now we get to one who is definitely overpriced, but maybe not that overpriced, because look, you don't have any Chris Carson this week. That's one. You don't have Travis Homer. He's doubtful. Or he's already ruled out. That's two. And you don't have any Rashad Penny, who's expected to miss. So that's three, right? So now you're down to Alex Collins and DJ Dallas in this backfield. So Alex Collins has a positive 24% run blocking advantage against a good run defense, though, a run defense that ranks number 6 overall in the NFL. And Alex Collins, just like Antonio Gibson, not going to get you the passing game work. Only one catch over his last 3 games. That's likely to be the DJ Dallas role tonight. But he has 10 attempts in every single game that he's had to be the primary running back or the starting running back this year. I would expect DJ Dallas to control the third down work. I would expect in this game somewhere around, as a 1-point favorite, game should stay close, probably somewhere around a 14 to 15 carry day for Alex Collins. And we're hoping that he can just average around 3 yards per carry so we can hit the over 43.5 rushing yards on Underdog today. Collins for me is going to be in play. Now, if you wanted me to put a yes on Collins, if I had to compare Gibson, McKissick, Collins, and some of these next players, then yes, a guy in the mid-range who becomes a yes for me is Collins. I think he sees about 14 to 15 touches, all on the ground though, so he kind of becomes a little bit touchdown dependent, not known to be an efficient back in a tough matchup. It could realistically be a 15 carry, 50-yard day for Alex Collins. We hit our props, but it's not doing anything for you. Likely needs to be getting there on the ground for you out of all these guys. Next up is Gerald Everett, another guy who is overpriced. I like Everett. I took the over receiving yards on him. I have him in some fantasy leagues tonight, but he's $6,200. Now look, he's seen solid usage since Russ has been back these last 2 games. He's played 80% of the snaps. He's ran 28 routes per game so far, and he's had 11 catches and 100 yards on 12 targets, 1 red zone target in there. That's pretty damn good usage for a tight end, right? 5.5 catches a game for 50 yards on 6 targets. That's pretty damn good usage. It's about 10 fantasy points. But 10 fantasy points is probably the minimum of what you're going to be needing at this price tag of $6,200, right? You've now seen 10 or more fantasy points in 3 out of 5 games with when Russ is in there with Everett, which is good to see. So Everett is definitely in play. I expect Everett to run around 25 routes tonight. I would expect Everett more times than not to see somewhere around 5 targets. The problem is, like a 4-catch, 40-yard game, it might not get it done because that's about what the kicker's production is going to be, and he's way more expensive. So Everett, Collins, McKissick, Gibson, this price range after those 5 studs up top is very, very difficult. It becomes a very touchdown or bust price range, right? Like I'm putting a yes on Alex Collins, but that's just because I think that he point per dollar wise grades out the best for if you're just comparing him to all these other guys in the range who are a little bit overpriced. But this range overall, Gibson, McKissick, Collins, and Everett is a touchdown or bust range in my opinion, unless McKissick goes off in the receiving game. Now we start to get to the murky range of where there's a lot of guys who are banged up, right? We scroll down here. DeAndre Carter is not banged up himself. He's been operating as the wide receiver too, but with Curtis Samuel expected to return today, and Adam Humphries might return, who left that last game early, and he practiced it in a limited fashion all week, so I expect him to. It makes DeAndre Carter's status today a little bit wonky. Like DeAndre Carter is not, he's mainly a special teams player, used to play the slot a little bit for the Tennessee or the Houston Texans, so this is a tough sell at $5,600 for DeAndre Carter on my end. Like again, these last 3 games, he's operating as the wide receiver too, right? He's got 8 catches, 129 yards, 3 touchdowns. He's got a touchdown in 3 straight games, which is going to make his actual production and what he's doing seem a little bit more crazy. He hasn't top 23 route runs, or he has top 23 route runs just once this entire season, so you're not getting insane usage. And now Curtis Samuel is expected to play. And now also Adam Humphries might return, which means that you're probably going to see DeAndre Carter go from running about 20 routes to 10 routes and at 5,600. Even if he runs 15 routes and sees 3 targets, at 5,600, it's a tough sell for me. I have him projected for 5.5 fantasy points. I have him on here right now as a no. I'm expecting DJ Dallas to operate as the running back 2 this week. And again, no Carson, no Penny, no Homer. And in week 11, he started to get a little bit of usage when there was an injury in that game. He played 37% of the snaps. He saw 2 targets on 11 routes. He mainly was the main pass catching running back there. And he had 4 attempts, 2 in the red zone. So he saw 6 total opportunities. That's not great. I think that number comes up a little bit this week. Maybe you get 40% of the snaps. You get somewhere around 7 or 8 opportunities for him. I have him projected right now for 7 fantasy points. Another guy who at $5,200 doesn't look great. Another guy who just going to grade out as a touchdown or bust. Now we get to the range where it starts to get a little bit wonky. You get a lot of defenses and kickers coming up here, but you get these 2 players that we don't know what their status is going to be. They're expected to return, practicing in a limited fashion all week, both of them. You started off with Curtis Samuel, who has not played a full game this season. Week 4, he came back. He was very, very limited, like only ran like 13, 14 routes limited, but did see a good amount of targets, like 5 or 6 targets. Week 5, he ends up getting hurt pretty quick in that game. So I'm expecting a limited role here, right? I mean, that's what we've seen all year. I'm expecting a somewhat limited role here, but even in a limited role, if it's 15 routes run, it's going to take away from a DeAndre Carter. It's difficult to really want to get to Curtis Samuel because of that. I have him for like 6.5 fantasy points, so I'll put Curtis Samuel on here if you're building one lineup as a no. If you are somebody, though, this is just me putting out there, trying to put out their objective information that we've seen this year through stats and things like that, and trying to get it down into a letter grade. He's not going to probably be in 0% of my lineups. If I'm playing 150s, I'm going to get more than 0% Samuels. That's not what that no means. It just means relative to other players' interests. If you are somebody who has a higher risk tolerance and you're okay taking a little bit more risks, then Curtis Samuel becomes more appealing, because there is a world where Curtis Samuel, they've been holding him out this long to make sure that this time that he comes back, he is definitely 100% healthy. And if he's going out there 100% healthy, you're getting 25 routes and you're probably seeing somewhere around 5 or 6 targets. And then at that price tag, especially with so many guys around him overpriced, Samuel starts to look good. So there is a world where Curtis Samuel does look very good tonight, especially if we get news later in the day. So again, your risk tolerance here, your lineups, your dollar rooskies. So next player up, another man in Logan Thomas, who is going to be coming back today, and Logan Thomas is expected to return. Ricky Seals-Jones is doubtful, so it's just Logan Thomas, John Bates the backup. It's going to be the Logan Thomas show, unless he is limited, which we don't have news on right now. In 3 full games this season that he has played, he has finished with 12, 10, and 12 fantasy points, a tight end 1 finish in all 3 games, and the Washington football team offense plays through the tight end a lot. They play through the middle of the field, and they tight end a lot here. I like Logan Thomas at $4,800. I think he looks like a pretty standout play in this range. He's not projecting out for 10 or 12 fantasy points for me, but at 8 to 8.5 fantasy points, at lower ownership, around only 20% on the Patreon ownership projections, Logan Thomas in this range at least looks like a fair price. Both the defenses are in play. They both have solid run defense. Their secondaries are both pretty poor. Seattle's pass rush is not the greatest. I would definitely lean to the Washington football team defense. If I had to choose one defense here and I had to put a no on one of them, I'd say no on Seattle's defense. I'd say yes on Washington football teams, just because I think their pass rush is a little bit better and Russ has not been playing as well. But both are definitely in play. Both kickers are firmly in play. If I had to choose one of the kickers right now that's going to be projecting out better, especially because of what you're just seeing projection-wise, Jason Myers, I think, probably hits an optimal lineup a little bit more than a Joey Sly. So if I had to choose between the kickers and the defenses right now, I'd probably say that Jason Myers is the one out of this range of these $4,000 kickers and defenses that would stand out, a little bit more secure. Think he hits an optimal, a little bit more cheaper price tag, cheapest price tag of the 4, nicer team total. I think it looks nice. And now we start to operate in where can we find a value play, Sal, below $4,000? Where are the values on this showdown slate, Sal? Where are they, right? People from the Clips channel are saying, where are they right now? Below $4,000, there's going to be some names here, and they're not going to be looking like good names. We can start off with Cam Sims, who you might be saying, this might be the guy, Sal. This dude scored a touchdown last time. Let's slow down here, right? 10 routes run over the last 2 games. Not 10 routes each game, 10 total routes, 5 routes run per game, right? And during that time, on 10 routes, he's seen 4 targets, 4 catches, 29 yards, and a touchdown. That is a 40% target rate. That is nowhere near going to continue. He's been splitting this wide receiver 3 role with Humphries and Dax Millen, and now Humphries might return, and now Curtis Samuel might return, and now Logan Thomas might return. So Cam Sims at $3,800, I'm sorry, he's probably $3,000 overpriced on this slate. I have Cam Sims for 1.8 fantasy points. No, thank you. John Bates is $3,600, another man who is overpriced. He is going to be, so look, the last 2 games he's been operating as the primary tight end. Ricky Seals-Jones gets hurt versus Tampa Bay, and then last game there's no Logan Thomas or Ricky Seals-Jones. In those last 2 games, he's actually seen decent usage, 31 routes run in the last 2 games, 6 catches for 48 yards, 6 targets. So 10.5 fantasy points through 2 games. That's like 5.5 fantasy points a game, which is not the worst if you were to get that on this slate at $3,800 or $3,600. The problem is I don't think he's going to get that, because now he's going to operate as the tight end 2 behind Logan Thomas. Expect his routes run to go from being around 15, 16 per game to now being like 6 to 8 per game, and expect 0 to 1 targets, which means at $3,600, he's probably $3,000 overpriced. I have him projected for 1 flat, no decimal, 1 fantasy point today. If there was a place to try and find some value on this slate, I think this is where we get it. These next 2 receivers, one from each team. $2,800 Adam Humphries. We have to make sure that he's actually active. I think he's going to play. He's questionable, but he's been in a limited practice all week long, but we will end up tracking that status. If he plays, I would expect 20 to 25 routes here, right? Curtis Samuel being active is likely to take more away from DeAndre Carter on the outside than an Adam Humphries. But overall, Samuel being out there takes away from Humphries, a better player. Logan Thomas being out there in the middle of the field takes away from Humphries, just a bigger body, especially in the red zone. But Humphries right now, expect 20 to 25 routes, expect 2 to 4 targets, and expect somewhere around 2 or 3 receptions in this game. It is a decent value tag because of that. I don't think Humphries looks elite, but if you get Humphries for a 2 or 3 catch game for 20 or 30 yards, 5 or 6 fantasy points below the kicker's price tags could get it done for you. Doesn't look great, but if there's something down here that looks decent below $3,000, I would say Adam Humphries looks the best. The man who's next in line next to him would be the wide receiver 3 on Seattle, Freddie Swain, right? This is a guy who over the last 5 weeks, over the last 3 weeks, has 0 receptions, by the way. So that's not a great sell to begin with, but we're talking about this specific game, right? His snaps have dropped each of the last 5 weeks to a season low or a 6-week low, 40% last time out for Freddie Swain. Again, that is not great. Freddie Swain right now is basically a touchdown or bust at this price tag. There's been 2 or 3 weeks where Freddie Swain has gotten you there. He's scored a touchdown in those games. So you have to have, and one of those games was a blown coverage, so he's nowhere near as good as this 4.8 fantasy points per game is saying, which I know is not even good. If I had to choose between Adam Humphries and Freddie Swain, I would lean to Adam Humphries, who I've projected for about a point more right now. I think they both come in around 15% owned or so. The next man up is going to be owned, I think, probably higher than he should. He probably comes in maybe with like a 8% ownership number on him tonight. That's going to be a little bit too high. Look, he's played 20% of the snaps in 2 of his last 3 games, Jarrett Patterson, the rookie, but he's only ran 5 total routes this year, not just in the last 2 or 3 games, the entire season. Right? That's a lot of games he's been active for like 6 games. He's only ran 5 routes. So there's a 0 in the passing game. 20% of the snaps last week led to 7 opportunities on the ground. So even if you think that the rookie Jarrett Patterson is going to see 20% of the snaps, which would be a lot, would tie like his season high, and you think he's going to see 7 or 8 touches on the ground, which again would see pretty close to his season high numbers. Even if you think those things are going to happen, you give him 8 carries tonight, 8 carries against a good run defense. What does that give you? He's probably not going to get the goal line touches. That's Antonio Gibson's role. He's not getting the passing game work as shown this year, and that's McKissick's role. So 8 carries on the ground. He probably has to break a long touchdown. That is the only way you play $1,000 Jarrett Patterson today. Otherwise, 8 carries, even in a good game, is going to go for like 30 yards. And I'm sorry, 3 fantasy points, even at $1,000, isn't enough to win a slate, and that's in a good game for him. So Patterson, for me, is not going to be in play. If you're looking for a player $1,000 or below, somebody to just absolutely punt the slate on, it would be Will Dissly. Look, he's been less involved, though, since Gerald Everett has been back. And his last 2 games, when Everett has been in and Russell Wilson is now back, he's played 50% of the snaps in the last 2 games combined, which is the lowest he's seen since week 3, right? And what happened around week 3, that's when Russ gets hurt and Gerald Everett gets hurt. So that's why. But it led to 24 routes these last 2 games, so 12 routes a week, 3 catches on 5 targets for 38 yards. So this usage is not terrible for the price tag. Like if you're telling me that I'm going to get around 14, 15 routes, and it could easily drop back down to what he was doing weeks 1, 2, and 3, just 8 routes run. But if there's a chance I can get 15 routes and 2 or 3 targets from a $600 player today, especially a tight end who is likely to be on the field for a couple plays in the red zone, it at least keeps him in play. Again, right now I probably prefer Adam Humphries more. At this point, I prefer Adam Humphries and Freddie Swain more because those guys are going to run 20 to 25 routes, double to triple the routes as Will Dissly. But if you're looking for a last-ditch effort, just throw your hands in the air like you just don't care a punt play, it would be Will Dissly. The rookie D. Eskridge has been battling back from injuries this year. He only has 8 total routes, though, as they don't really use wide receiver 4s in this offense all that much. Since returning, he has 8 total routes, 1 catch, -4 yards. Not great. Dax Millen, the rookie that played, if you're not familiar, I'm probably mispronouncing the last game, played with at BYU with Mr. Zach Wilson. He's had at least 1 target in 6 straight games, which is very surprising. 21 total routes during his last 3 games have led to 5 targets, 4 catches, 49 yards. Some garbage time in there, and that's not great, right? That's the last 3 games. That's him averaging 3 fantasy points a game, and that's like the upper end of his usage, and now you're getting to come back Logan Thomas, Adam Humphries, and Curtis Samuel. So it's tough to like Dax today. I've got Dax for 0.7 fantasy points. I've got the rookie Diami Brown for a half a fantasy point today. Only 7 total routes in the last 2 games, and that's with no Samuel, and now Samuel's going to return, who he is basically the direct replacement for. I'm sorry, out of UNC, the rookie Diami Brown, I'm probably not getting to you. So as you can see here, there's like really fluky punt plays that have some upside though in Adam Humphries, Freddie Swain, and Will Dissly. You start to go to the mid-range, and it is really just dominated by kickers and defenses other than Logan Thomas, other than Curtis Samuel, who I have Curtis Samuel as a no. I think we can put him towards a maybe. Other than those guys, it's tough. And then you get to this upper mid-range. Outside of the studs up top, the studs up top all look good, right? I mean, this range of Russell Wilson to DK Metcalf is where your captains are going to come from. If there was a range for another captain in the mid-range, I'd probably say it's some sort of combination of Logan Thomas and an Alex Collins. Collins has 2 touchdown upside. Thomas just in general has touchdown upside, and if he's fully healthy is a nice price tag. But the main upside is going to come from these top 5 guys, so it's finding a captain that you like and then rolling from there, because the mid-range, my man, from the $7,000 to like the $5,000 range, it is bare. This range right here from J.D. McKissick to Curtis Samuel, a lot of guys have question marks. They're going to see a lot of usage, though, so it's touchdown or bust probably on most of those players. But that is the Week 12 slate. We're closing it up. We're wrapping up the shop right now. Hey, if you have not yet already, go ahead and sign up for either Prize Picks or Underdog. Use the code Sally. Get a free bet up to $100 Rooskies. Dollar bills, y'all. It is that simple. And if you had 2 seconds of your time, you can go to ratethispodcast.com/Sal. If you go there, it really helps the show, and you yourself get into a chance to win $100 Rooskies. So you don't want the $100 Rooskies in your hand. We'll spin a wheel on the Sunday live stream. You'll see if you won or not. When you rate the podcast, leave a way for me to contact you, whether it's through Twitter, whether it is through whatever it might be, PayPal, I don't know, whatever it might be. Just leave a way for me to contact you and get you them $1 Rooskies, y'all. I'll be live at 6 p.m. East Coast time tonight. I hope you join the Patreon community today as well. You get all the tools, the optimizer, the Discord, but 1,000+ members members, talking to people just like you or trying to win dollar rookies. Why not? Somebody taking down $11,000, somebody taking down $5,000, $8,000 yesterday. Why not? Why not you? Come on in. Appreciate you all a ton, gang. I'll see you when I see you. I'll see you in the next one, the 6 p.m. live stream tonight. Peace out, gang.